All right, this video is finishing up operant conditioning with reinforcement schedules. So, reinforcement schedules are all about when and how often do I have to reinforce a particular behavior. So, do I have to reinforce it all the time? For example, continuous. Continuous reinforcement is going to be where you get reinforcement every single time you do a specific behavior. Now, for example, I think I've mentioned in class that I have used operant conditioning when I am potty training my children. When I potty trained all of my children, I used positive reinforcement. So I gave them an M&M, a Skittle, or any type of little candy or whatever to be able to encourage them to go to the bathroom on the potty, right? So continuous reinforcement is doing that every single time. Now, think about this. It works to a point, right? So, at the beginning, I'm giving M&Ms every single time they go on the potty. Well, what happens eventually is that, am I going to continue to do this forever? Okay? When my kids are teenagers, are they still going to get, M&Ms for going on the potty? The answer would be no. So the problem with continuous reinforcement is that, yes, it works. It's really good startup, and it really gets it going, gets the behavior trained in right away. However, the problem is that then it becomes that is the expectation that you are going to get that reinforcement every single time. And so eventually you will want to move to partial reinforcement. And so partial reinforcement is going to reinforce the behavior only occasionally. Because if you don't switch to partial reinforcement, you are going to have problems where if you stop the reinforcement, they are not going to continue the behavior, which is not what you want. So, when you're doing partial reinforcement, you have a couple of options. The first option is what we call a ratio schedule. And a ratio schedule is going to be reinforcing after so many times doing that behavior. So, for example, a fixed ratio schedule is when the behavior is reinforced after so many responses. Okay, so going back to my kids' potty training as an example, initially, I gave an M&M for every time they first, went and sat on the potty. And then they had to get an M, in order to get an M&M, they had to actually do something on the potty. And then it eventually got to the point where, okay, now they're going to the bathroom on the potty, consistently. But now we're working on not just going to the bathroom on the potty, but now we're working on staying clean and dry all day, because that's like the next step. No accidents, because they may know how to use the bathroom, but they may not remember to use the bathroom all the time. Maybe they get caught up on, this train is really exciting and I really want to play with it and I don't want to stop to go to the bathroom. So you may change it to, for example, going and staying clean and dry. So here's my fixed ratio example. So eventually we got to that point with my youngest, for example. We got to that point and we would go and give him a sticker on the calendar every time he had a day without accident. So he had no accident in his pants, he gets a sticker. And what we would tell him was that we said, okay, if you get 10 stickers in a row, we will give you this lovely new Paw Patrol toy. Paw Patrol is the it thing for him. Okay, that was when he was potty training. So this was literally the toy that he got. That was Chase, by the way, in case you're wondering. That is a fixed ratio schedule because it is a reinforcement, the toy, after so many responses. He has to have 10 days with no accidents. That's a fixed ratio. Now, a variable ratio is going to be where the behavior is reinforced after an unpredictable number of responses. You don't know when all of a sudden you're going to be reinforced. If I did this for the whole potty training thing, it would have to be where, this week you get the toy after, staying dry for 3 days, and next week it would be for 5 days, and the following week could be for 2 days, and whatever. And it would just be varying amounts of time that you were doing the behavior. Your book uses the example of slot machines. Slot machines work because if you think about how a slot machine works, you pull the lever and the little, mechanism moves all the the things around, if you get 3 cherries in a row or whatever, you get money. Well, slot machines don't pay out consistently. It's not like every 10th pull of the lever, I'm going to get money, or the 5th pull, or the 12th pull, or whatever. It's a varying amount of time, but it's after so much times of pulling the lever. So maybe this time it's after the 12th pull, the next time maybe it's after the 6th pull, or the 5th pull, or whatever. Another example of this is bonuses. If you know somebody who gets bonuses, and this is not a Christmas bonus, because a Christmas bonus is completely different. This is going to be a bonus that's tied to, for example, let's say they're a car salesman, right? Maybe you get a bonus after, hey, you did a really great job this month. You sold 15 cars. We're going to give you a bonus. And next month, you sold 15 cars and you don't get a bonus. But the following month, you only sold 7 cars and you get a bonus, right? So it's a varying amount of behaviors that are reinforced. The big thing that you have to remember is ratio is about the amount of times the behavior has occurred, okay? Interval, then, is going to be how much time has passed. So a fixed interval schedule reinforces after a fixed amount of time. So, for example, you probably get paid on a fixed interval schedule. So, every 2 weeks you get paid, right? So every other Friday you get paid. That's a fixed interval schedule, okay? If you are a cook, right, you probably have to boil water a lot. Okay, water boils after a certain amount of time. It doesn't matter how many times I go and check the water, right? It's still going to boil in the same amount of time. Okay, it's not going to boil faster because I'm checking it more often. That whole idea of watched hot never boils. Okay, so that's a fixed interval schedule because it's after a certain amount of time. A variable interval schedule is going to be reinforcing after a varying amount of time. You just don't know when it's going to happen. Okay, so for example, with this is the example of teacher observations, right? So these are some of the administrators. Okay, so variable interval schedule is going to be after a varying amount of time. Okay, you will be reinforced. Okay, so teacher observations are one of those things where it's kind of on a fixed interval schedule because they're required to observe me once a year. But within that year, I don't know when it's going to happen. It could be in October. It could be in November. It could be in May. Yes, by the way, I have been observed in May, and that is the worst time to observe a teacher who teaches seniors. I don't know why they did that. But that is a variable interval schedule because you have no idea when it's going to happen. Okay, so go back to this whole potty training thing because I think this helps people kind of wrap their brain around it. So the fixed ratio is my son needs to have 10 stickers in a row to be able to get the Paw Patrol car, right? Variable ratio would be after staying dry for 5 days this week he gets the Paw Patrol car. Next week it's only 2 days he gets a Paw Patrol car. The following week he has to try to stay dry 7 days, and it's a varying amount of times that he has to stay dry. Fixed interval would be if he got a toy at the end of the week every week. Doesn't matter how many times he stayed dry. Okay. Variable interval schedule would be is that he gets a toy every after the first 3 days, and then it's after 6 days, and then it's after 2 days, and it doesn't matter how many times he stayed dry. Okay. So hopefully that analogy and that example helps you kind of think about this. But which one would be the best? Which schedule be the best to be able to actually encourage behavior to continue on its own? Hopefully you said variable ratio, because that would be the answer. Why, you ask? Well, think about it this way. First of all, it's one of the variables, right? Because if it's a fixed one, okay, the problem with a fixed one is a fixed schedule is that they can start to expect it. And so it's going to be an expectation of when it's going to happen. Whereas variable, you have no idea when it's going to happen, right? So you better be doing the behavior all the time. The other reason why it's variable ratio is because variable ratio is dependent upon the behavior. Interval is dependent upon just a varying amount of time. And who knows if the behavior is actually happening during that time period. It could happen once or twice or 10,000 times. You have no idea how many times it's happening during that time period. So it's going to be much more likely that the reinforcement is going to be tied to the behavior if it's on a variable ratio schedule. And it will be better to actually continue the behavior after the reinforcement is actually eventually pulled, because you don't want to continue to reinforce every single time, because that would be bad. All right, hopefully this makes sense as far as reinforcement schedules are concerned. Let me know if you have any questions.